Welcome again to another episode of the Recording the Dialogical Self, the official podcast brought to you in collaboration with the International Conference of Dialogical Self 2026 in Thessaloniki. I'm your host, Kronos, and today I'm very happy to be joined by Manuel de la Mata Benitez from the University of Sevilla. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So nice to have you.
Thank you. So, do you want me to introduce myself? Or?
Yeah, I'll give it to Greece. Before.
It's actually my third time. Well, the first time I went to Crete in 2016. It was another congress in a different society. And I was there for 5-6 days. Wonderful place, by the way. Then in 2019, I went to Ioannina for another conference, only the days of the conference. Well, this time, because it's also coincident with our holidays in Spain, I'm coming here with my wife. And before that, we arrived on 2020, and we had the opportunity to go to have a wonderful ride by the Peloponnese, visiting wonderful places and enjoying a lot this wonderful country.
Yeah, thank you. So, can you introduce us to your work here?
Yes, of course. I mean, I'm defining myself as a cultural psychologist. So in general, I'm interested in how culture, the practices and the meanings we construct in our lives shape our minds, I would say. And I've been working in different topics, but right now I'm mostly focused on identity, especially in people in situations of social exclusion or minorized, and in particular with migrant people. Mm-hmm. So the symposium I've been invited to organize is about identity and migration, and the complete title is Obstacles and Resources. How people in situations of difficulty like migration, which is always represents a kind of breach or rupture in people's and groups' experience, manage to deal with these all these difficulties related to to the change of the context, of course, changes in value systems, and also in many cases, unfortunately, with accompanied by rejection and sometimes xenophobia and racism. So, and especially how these people reconstruct themselves in this difficult situation. That would be my main focus of our research now, and this is also the topic of the symposium we're going to have tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. How do you share any findings or any conclusions?
Well, for people, I would say that there are four main things of main resources that there are conditions that are necessary for people in situations of social exclusion, not only in the case of migration, to be able to deal with these difficulties and go on with their lives. This is one, of course, is to have some kind of support, social support from close people, but also from institutions, etc. It's also very important to develop and to acquire what we call alternative narratives to the narratives of exclusion. For example, xenophobia, in which people are said that you should not be here, you have to go back to your country, etc. These kind of things, and they need to appropriate. They need to learn and to use and to assimilate alternative stories about their rights of human beings, their right to live in another country, etc. Another important thing, another important element, in my opinion, is reflection. It's necessary to reflect about all this situation. And finally, forms of agency, capacity to act not only individually, because I'm not only speaking about individual human beings, but also about groups, and about to develop a sense of community, of what we call in dialogical self theory, we-ness. To be we, not just to belong, sense of belonging, right?
How can they change the narrative of exclusion?
You can find different ways. Sometimes they just have kind of explicit and we can say political response to this narrative of exclusion by, for example, vindicating a narrative of human rights. Sometimes people try to do it in a kind of more, let's say, personal, individual way. Sometimes there are also, I don't think it's the best case, but like they internalize these narratives and they say, okay, I'm not like the other migrants. I'm a good migrant, let's say. So there are many people. And so there are different ways of dealing with these kind of narratives of exclusion. But I think it's necessary. Of course, it's not only. It doesn't only depend on the excluded group, but also of the majority group, of what kind of opportunities they give to these people, and if they also find, the migrants, for example, find people in the majority society who support their situation and this kind of alternative narrative. For me, I think this is very important because I have been studying different groups in situations of exclusion, not only migrant people, but, for example, people with alternative gender roles or alternative sexualities, or people, for example, with in another project with mental health problems. Mm-hmm. And in all cases, I'm pretty much convinced that having this kind of alternative narrative is very, very important, because we use this term that I use in my research, which is master narratives and versus alternative narratives, because we construct our identity, which is, from my perspective, like a life story that we are all the time elaborating in our lives. It's always changing, of course, because life is changing. And to develop this kind of personal narrative, identity narrative, we take what some people have called the menu of stories from our culture. Mm-hmm. And this, of course, these stories are not always coherent, and they are not always in accordance. Sometimes they are conflictual, and we take them. So it's important to have the possibility to take alternative narratives to elaborate a positive life story, in the sense that I'm not a bad person. I'm not someone who is going to steal, the jobs of the people living in this country, for example, in the case of migrants. Mm-hmm. But I'm a person who has the right to live in another country, who has to arrive to create a future for my family, etc. So, human rights in general, in some, okay. And of course, there are the other elements I mentioned, like support. Is very important to realize that you are not alone. You are not the only one in this situation. There are many other people like you, so you are not like a strange person or strange member of a group. But there are many other people like you, and of course, I think it's necessary this some level of reflection about what is going on, and to act, do things. Not just think, but also act, to have what we call agency.
Mm-hmm. To be able to give solutions.
Yeah, and to vindicate your rights, to have initiative. Well, there are many different things that can be done. Of course, some from a more individual or more family or more collective or political perspective. But in all cases, so because it's very important, one of the presentation this morning dealt with this to change the perspective of being a victim to being a survivor. This is a term that we can use, or someone who is doing things, someone who can take some responsibility for his or her life. So I think it's very important. So I think we human beings need to have this sense of agency, that our life is not just something that happens to us.
We can do something.
But it's something that in which we can do something. Of course, we cannot do everything. Of course, there are constraints and there are limitations in the context, in the situation, in society. But anyway, I think there is always some room for resistance, for doing something in front of the exclusion, the difficulties, the problems, etc.
Do you think that sometimes immigrants tend to feel that they don't have this agency, or they can acquire it by doing something extreme?
Yeah. Sometimes if they are, all the time receiving this kind of message that you should not be here, you have to go back to your country, and say this is not your country.
Yeah.
You are, stealing, you are taking the jobs of our people, etc. I think it's difficult to be able to to resist this continuous bombing of this kind. And now this is not new in human history, of course, but now we are all the time exposed to this kind of discourses. But I think there is always. I prefer to look at the bright side. There's always some room for resistance, even in very difficult situations. And to me, it's amazing how people manage to resist even in so difficult situations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but a really difficult situation creates this agency to be somehow more extreme, to get out of the sense that I am a victim.
Yeah, sometimes
they try to be like, you are the victim, I will be the bad victim.
Yeah. But I mean, this we use you use the term position in our theory. It's like a tension, from my perspective, between the position of being a victim, because you are a victim, because there's someone who is, exerting violence against you. But at the same time, you need to have some sense of agency, that you can do something. Of course, it depends on the situation, how much you can do. There are situations in which, the room for resistance is relatively small. In other cases, it's bigger. But anyway, I think it's necessary, at least in terms of not internalizing or not assuming all this negative discourse against you, this kind of internalized, that we could call, for example, internalized xenophobia. So, and this is, sometimes we find this, people, but sometimes it's kind of, it's complex, as is contradictory, but I think, from our perspective, the ideological self-theory, I think, give us conceptual tools to understand that contradiction is part of human mind. I mean, it's part of. So you can have in the same person contradictory tendency. Let's say, on the one hand, I resist these kind of discourses of exclusion. On the other hand, I may be trying to demonstrate that I am a good migrant in the sense that I'm not like everybody else who, are like...
Yeah, they're good bad ones.
Yeah, these kind of things. No, I remember from another study, but it's interesting, some years ago, a migrant from Chile in Seville, in the same interview, on the one hand, she was speaking about religion, and she was saying that we Chileans are more religious than Spanish people, for example. Mm-hmm. So the we, for her in that moment, were the Chileans. But 10 minutes later, when she was speaking about, safety in the streets and crime, they say we that live in Seville is not, for us, not the same that for people living in Santiago de Chile, for example. Yeah. So you can see, but this is part of human discourse. This is identity. Yeah. This is the way we say we don't say we have identities. We say we play identities, or we do identities. Identities are the things we do. It's not something that we have, because we take different positions. This is what we say in dialogical self-theory, and I think it's very interesting, very good to understand, all this complexity in human discourse, in human life, and in identities in particular.
Yeah, not tend to polarize to one identity.
That's the problem when because we human beings, we are many things at the same time. We're not just one thing. We are, of course, we have a gender identity because it's something very basic, but we are, members of a age group. We maybe we have, we share with other people some, things that we like. We may be members of a religious society. We may fans of a sport club. There are so many things at the same time. The problem is when identity is reduced to one single thing, and this person is just categorized as being whatever. I mean, Moroccan or Chilean or Spanish or whatever, or Greek or whatever. So because it makes more difficult to find what I heard a beautiful expression said, members of the humankind.
Yeah.
So,
have you studied second generation immigrants and how they tend to differentiate?
Not really in particular this thing. No, it's not. I mean, I have read about the difficulties they have sometimes because they are in a in between position. Yeah. Between, on the one hand, they are raised and they have grown in the in the country of host country, but on the other hand, they have families and they are categorized by the members of the host country as being migrant. So, and sometimes they have different reactions. Sometimes they identify too much with the host countries and they give up from their cultural origin. Sometimes they come back. They identify even more with the original with the culture of their families, and they may have difficulties to find their place. And it's very much, of course, it depends very much on how members of the majority society, if they accept that societies, and this is something that is everywhere, are multicultural, are not just one culture. Of course.
I've seen I've been working with second generation immigrants, and I've seen them work too much. They work saying that, okay, I will work and I will be more special than others in order to wash out all the bad things that
to demonstrate that I am a good member of society or something.
And I will do that and for the history of my parents, that they suffered, that they were told that it's okay. And I will make my parents proud as immigrants because I want to wash out all this.
Yeah, but sometimes they also create some conflicts with the families because, the changes in values, on cultural behaviors, things like that. Yeah.
For instance, I've been working with some people from Albania. Came here, most of them came here during the 90s. So we have second and third generations.
Okay.
And they tend to change their names now.
Oh, to make a Greek, take like a Greek names.
Yeah, for instance, if you want an S at the end of a Greek name or of any name, it sounds more Greek.
Okay.
If you stop with an A, for instance, it sounds like foreign.
Okay.
So they change their names or they change a letter in their names in order to sound more Greek, and they have confidence with their families.
Okay, I guess. Because the family, on the one, they would like to, to maintain some culture of origin, yeah. But on the other hand, cultures are always changing, so it's not just to keep them frozen. It's not possible. They are always changing.
Yeah, they say, are you ashamed of your origin? Are you ashamed of your culture? But they don't understand that this is a way of them integrate into the society.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else that you would like to?
Well, first, thank you for the invitation. It's been a great pleasure, and I hope it can be useful to disseminate our work, and I think in a world that I think that needs accepting human diversity, which is.
We do need that.
Okay, so thank you.
Thanks so much for being here.